Well, Jason, thanks so much for bringing me in the loop here with the Conservancy and being such an awesome supporter of just growing your own food in general.
For sure, it's been awesome to follow what you guys are doing, and glad that it's like a movement right now.
Yeah, likewise. It's fun to watch you get into it with your garden, your first raised beds. It started with one, and then you just decided I can't just have one.
Exactly.
But Jason, it really seems as though what the photos that you sent are found space. Okay, I can't talk anymore.
Sorry. I just hijacked the entire.
Yeah. Leah, can we do
what were you saying, Lori?
a Zoom? I don't care. Can we do a Zoom just of babies?
We can. Chris will have to get his to join.
Yeah, Chris will need 3 other cameras.
Yeah.
Oh.
For those who are just joining us, there was even more adorable children earlier.
Yeah. No, I was just saying the photos that you sent to me, Jason, that we published in one of our newsletters, was such a dramatic change from like just a dusty entrance to a building to a full garden. It's really interesting.
It's the little 5-foot wide by, I don't know, I think it's like 15 feet long between our 2 driveways that, I've been cutting for our neighbors for the last 10 years with a weed whacker. And we planted 1 4x8 bed on March 29th is when I put seeds in. And I mean, we were eating out of it in like a month and a half.
Wow.
Half of that, but then the second half of it was seedlings that I got from the Backyard Eats plant sale.
That's awesome.
All right, should we get started? I think it's just a little past 6 o'clock now.
We have a quorum.
Shall I start? Hello, everyone. I'm Lori Salganikov with the Chestnut Hill Conservancy. Thank you all for coming to our very first successful virtual Ask the Experts sessions. We typically do these Ask the Experts once a quarter and try to offer information about homes and gardens and things relating to the things that the Conservancy is working on. So historic houses, house renovation, open space conservation, and of course, now that we're talking about open space and gardens, eating from our backyards is the next thing that we're doing today. So we're very delighted to have Chris Mattingly and Mike Bennett from Backyard Eats. And I just want to, though, thank all of you for coming to this. Thank Susan Peck and Jean McCoubry for organizing all of these, and Leah Silverstein for coordinating and organizing everything. And I'm pleased to welcome our partner in this offering, this free exercise in awesomeness to the Community Association. So I'd just like to welcome Ann McNiff to say hello.
Hello everybody. Thank you for zooming in tonight. The Community Association, we really enjoy this partnership we have with the Conservancy on these Ask the Experts. We're always looking to do something and to do different activities that are of interest to the community, and this is a perfect avenue. It's very nice that these in-person type of workshops, if you will, can translate to Zoom, and I'm glad that we're able to continue doing it. Also want to just very quickly let you know that the Community Association is going to be doing more online events, so please keep an eye out for that. And also for those of you who are already members, we are really encouraging people to use their passport to the Chestnut Hill experience to support local Chestnut Hill businesses as they begin to open up again. And if you're not a member, with membership does come the passport, which has lots of free and discounted offers to many places throughout Chestnut Hill, Mount Airy, Lafayette Hill, etc. And it's a nice way to save a little bit, but also to support our local businesses. So anybody has any questions, you please feel free to just email me separately. I'm at ann@chestnuthill.org. That's it.
And thank you, Anne. And I strongly recommend, if you're not a member of the Community Association, that you join. Anne's a great leader of that organization. And the Conservancy is a different organization from the Chestnut Hill Community Association. And so together we are partnering on things of mutual interest, but the Conservancy is also a membership organization. We'd welcome everyone. And I also just want to mention that next week on the 17th, we have another Ask the Experts session on residential lighting. And specifically, as we're thinking about energy efficiency, how to light more efficiently, the low-hanging fruit ways to lower your carbon footprint. And then on the 24th of June, in 2 weeks, we are hoping to have a rescheduled rain garden
On
discussion.
the 25th.
25th, you're right, sorry. Thank you. So without further ado, I'd love to hear what Chris and Mike have to say about eating from our backyards.
And just before we get started, we're just going to ask everybody to mute themselves so we can have our best experience with Mike and Chris. And you can also put any questions you may have in the chat. We're going to keep an eye on that, and we'll ask after they're done talking.
Yeah, so thank you, Leah. I will mute myself, but I should have said that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lori, Leah, and Anne, and the Community Association as well. This is a really exciting moment for me. I started this this venture about 4 years ago. It was just me in my hatchback and very little experience. And it's grown into quite the operation. So just by way of introducing what we're going to get into, we're going to show a video that features Mike Bennett, who's on here with us in one of our favorite gardens in Chestnut Hill on Bethlehem Pike. I won't identify exactly where it is, but you might be able to recognize it. So we're going to show that video, and then he's going to show some pictures that we have of gardens that we've done. And if I'm being completely honest, the video comes off a little bit commercially because we did want to present something quality to you today, and we also wanted to allow it to run like double purpose so we can use it again. So please forgive me for that, but I do think it is a good walkthrough of a garden, and it covers a lot of the features that we like to do, and I hope it'll be a good jumping off point for some of you and some of your questions. So that said, again, put the questions that you have into the chat box, and we'll go through after the video and the pictures and pull from those. So even if it's something that comes to mind while you're watching the video, throw it in the chat right away, and we'll get to you and we'll bring you up. And if you'd like, we'll unmute you and have you ask the question. Just a little more background, I think, because I'm really proud of what we're about to present today. I'm proud of what we've built in terms of Backyard Eats. I do want this to be a lot about like growing your own food and not about our company. But I do have to say that we we lived on Ardley Street, Ardley Engravers, and yeah, when I started this business, it was I think it started with one ad in the local, and I got one customer. And when I did her garden, I put up a yard sign in Chestnut Hill and got like 3 calls from that. And it just, with the lawn signs, it was just really cool to see how a community could sort of adopt a business like Backyard Eats and allow it to grow. And I think, I mean, we all know that it's a really special place. And I'm super grateful for Chestnut Hill. I think it's making possible a thing that we have great aspirations for that will extend well beyond Chestnut Hill. So anyway, thanks for joining and taking a peek into this current phase of our growth, and I'm looking forward to helping you with your questions. So I'll also introduce Mike. He's going to be featured in the video, and he's our garden design specialist. So he is the one who's responding to the consult requests and doing the walkthroughs and the solar exposure, sun exposure evaluations and designs, and a lot of the operations management as well. So Mike, I'll hand it over to you to play the video.
All right. Hi, I'm Mike Bennett. I'm the garden design specialist. And thanks again, everybody, for having us. I also want to second the point about, I think Chestnut Hill is a perfect space for a business like this and a perfect jumping off point. I am the garden design specialist, and as another disclaimer, not a paid actor, for better or worse. So this is my video debut. So I will share the video, which is about 7 minutes long. I'm gonna share the audio from it, and then I'm gonna go right into just a couple slides on a gallery of some of our gardens, and talk a little bit about planting more than I did in the video. And then from there, we can do Q&A. So I'll pull up the video now. I'm a garden design specialist with, hi, my name is Mike Bennett. I'm a garden design specialist with Backyard Eats. Backyard Eats is a full-service vegetable gardening company out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Our owner, Chris Mattingly, founded Backyard Eats on a mission of sharing the magic of homegrown food with others. We're really a 3-part business, starting at design and build, which starts with initial consultations, planning and planting, and then maintenance. So I'll talk a little bit about each facet of our business, and hopefully you'll get some inspiration on how to best use your space for homegrown food. So typically a design build starts with an initial consultation. So first and foremost, that involves sun for gardening. So I'll measure a sun profile or sun exposure of a property and decide with the homeowner where they want the garden laid out. It's nice to have it close to the house, but a lot of times sun will dictate that for us. From there, we'll make a footprint of the garden space. It's typically a fenced-in area, so either a square or rectangle space that we can work within. Sometimes we do put beds on the landscape. A lot of that has to do with critter control and protection. Small fences can be put on beds, and you can put them in the landscape kind of wherever you want. But if you want protection against your groundhogs and your deers, a 5 to 6 foot fence is typically recommended, which in that case the design usually turns into an enclosed garden area and using space efficiently within that area. But it's all client specific, and it's something we talk through on initial consultation. So we're out here at a garden that we designed, build, and maintained, just to show you a little bit about design and how that interacts with other forms of our business. So if you want to join me in the garden here. So once we have a layout and sun exposure figured out, we'll make a footprint with the client. and then there'll be several options for design. So first would be obviously the raised beds. So the building of the raised beds, options are usually wood type and bed height. So there's different types of wood that last, have different longevities. We'll use an internal wood stabilizer, but it depends on the type of wood, how long it's going to last. Here you'll see a 12-inch bed, which is pretty standard. Minimum 6-inch bed for growing, but as the beds get higher, they get a little bit more ergonomic to maintain. They also tend to look a little bit more significant as they're higher. So here you're seeing a 12-inch cedar bed with aluminum corner hardware. So obviously from here we fill the beds with soil, so it's typically a 50-50 blend of topsoil and potting mix. So once the beds are filled, trellising is an option our clients have. So here you'll see in this bed we have cedar frame trellising, typically 5 to 6 feet above the bed, installed when we install the garden. With netting. So trellising is all about using vertical space, so vining crops aren't spreading out. So we'll put vining crops, tomatoes on the trellis. Trellis is always on the north side of the garden, so it's not blocking the sun from the south. If there is not enough trellis space for the crops the client wanted for the season, we do install temporary trellising and supports. So here in front of me you're seeing tomato cages that will eventually get doubled into a tomato tower. And then here is bamboo and twine trellising. So this is trellising we installed in the spring, and the snap peas you see have climbed throughout the season. So different kinds of supports for peppers, tomatoes, peas, whatever it might be, but there's ways to support it off of the trellis. So another option we offer our clients is irrigation. So this is embed drip irrigation. We run from a client's hose spigot or water source. We typically will split the water source so they still have access to the hose and run all the way into each bed. We'll get drip lines about every foot with a timer set usually once a day in the morning. Pretty hands-off for the client. The only thing they really have to worry about is setting rain delays if there's rain in the forecast. But it's a great way to ensure efficient watering, germination, etc. So lastly, as far as design option goes, a lot of times because the layout is a fenced-in area, and we obviously build the beds in the most efficient way possible, but there is dead space inevitably. So instead of maintaining grass or growing materials in the dead space, we'll put down a weed barrier and give you the option for gravel or mulch pathways. So this garden you're seeing pea gravel, like a river rock, but there's plenty of other options. So that about covers it for design criteria. So the other facets of our business are planning and planting, and then maintenance. So planting usually starts with an order form. So we have a list of varieties that we've come to know and like, that our clients have given us feedback on. We'll send that out sometime in the winter, and our clients will get back to us with what they want to plant in their garden. So I'll take the order form, and we'll make a planting plan. So we'll map out the growing space in a given area, and using factors like spacing or crop rotation, obviously sun, we'll come up with a plan for spring and for summer. So we subscribe to this idea of succession planting, which means that you can get things in your garden in the spring early that might be more cold hardy, that can be ready for harvest before summer crops need to be planted, or summer crops can be planted within spring crops as summer matures, spring comes out. So we're really using your space over time as best we can. So we send you a plan, clients will approve it, and then we actually raise the plants from seed and plant the gardens ourselves. So from there, most of our clients take on a maintenance relationship, which is a full service maintenance, is a weekly maintenance typically. Maintenance usually consists of organic pest and disease management, weeding, trellis training, everything up to harvesting. We'll leave a bag of freshly harvested food on our client's doorstep. So they're all the different facets of maintenance. again, it's typically weekly, but it's up to the client's level of interest in getting involved. We definitely encourage involvement. A lot of clients want to learn, so we do a good job of communicating that. So that about covers planning and planting, maintenance, and we talked about design. So there are kind of three things we do here at Backyard Eats. So thank you for joining us today. I hope you got some inspiration on how to best use your space, and we hope to share the magic of homegrown food with you soon.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, you got it. Hold on one second. I'm going to pull this back up. So, just to show you some different gardens. Can everybody hear me? My audio transferred okay?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So these are gardens we've done recently. This is, like I did mention about the fencing, it really does play a kind of a big role in how these gardens are designed. You know, you can't really reach over a 5 to 6 foot fence. So I hope that made sense what I meant about enclosing it in an area. But so this is it's a 4 foot fence, but it's a lot of times we design these gardens that are kind of in a rectangle space. We actually used that this trowel here, and a client had it existing, and we kind of built around it and included it in the design. This next one, again, is a pretty typical design we've been doing, which is perimeter beds. A lot of times it can get big enough to put beds in the center. This client had just enough space really for pots. This is another example, 5 to 6 foot fence, cedar frame gate. This is also a great example on like the bottom left, how you see the beds are built into the landscape. So they're going to be level, the beds on top. So we kind of finesse them into the landscape depending on the slope and the site.
Just to bring home, Mike, the point about fencing, if you go back one.
Yep.
The way, when I remember designing this project and drew out this big rectangle and started with classic design of like maybe 3 4x8 beds. What does that get you in terms of space, and how much space does it take up? And this project was a sort of revelation for me when I did the math and did several design scenarios. The garden that you see in front of you was the most space efficient garden, so you get the most square footage of garden bed for the space that you're using up in the lawn. Because we love our lawns, let's be honest, and we don't want to use more than we need to. But this like putting the beds up against the fencing turned out to be very efficient. And yeah, there's some pots there now, but we might do something different, like a fig or something like in the middle, who knows. But anyway, just that was most of my gardens were being designed with like a 4x8 bed, and then we sort of switched when we realized how much more efficient we could be in this sort of keyhole garden, if that's a term you might be familiar with, just that you walk into the center and the garden's all around you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it tends to look I like kind of the 3-dimensional look of it. Something to consider with this design is that you don't want to really reach more than 2 feet into a bed. So if you have a perimeter bed, 2 feet is typical. If you can't access both sides, like a 4x8 in the middle of a landscape, if you can get to both sides, you'll find that more than 2 feet is kind of a stretch at points. So that's kind of what this is usually based on. And yeah, just to drive home that point again too, with the fencing dictates a lot, where if you put a 2 foot fence on a bed, you can kind of move it around, but once you have something you can't reach over, it becomes more efficient to do something like this. So this is more of a traditional bed in a landscape. This client liked the higher bed. It's easier to work with. I like the word ergonomic a lot.
And then we do these cedar ledges too, which look pretty nice. More of a aesthetically pleasing kind of touch. And then again, trellising where you can on the north side of the garden. This is a little bit of a higher bed. And this one's kind of unique just because of the height, and it's sort of like a patio bed, sort of like a planter box rather than a garden and a landscape. So I just wanted to show that for the sake of, it's a little different in a very tight space. There really is no yard option here, but we found sun, just happened to be on a patio. So I kind of just wanted to give an idea of what we raised from the nursery and how we go about planting, because I didn't really go into much detail in the video. So I don't know if this is overwhelming, but just a quick peek. It is pretty much everything we're planting this year. There's plenty of varieties of each. Like for instance, cherry tomato, we have 3 different varieties that clients that have been with us for a couple of years, kind of know what they like or what they haven't tried. So these are just kind of the subcategories of things we plant, most of which we raised from seed in our nursery. And it kind of gives you an idea of how we kind of categorize our crops, where like summer crops, for instance, aren't planted until the weather gets warmer, whereas there's some stuff that can be a little bit more cold hardy. So when a client gets an order form, it will have 2 selections for a lot of them. So like radishes, for example, will have your spring selection, and then if you want to use that space or have radishes all season, then you can select radishes in the summer as well. So some of them are kind of broken up into seasons, whereas like a lot of the bigger vegetables, just get planted in the summer and they stay all season. But this kind of breaks up, gives you an idea of what can be planted and harvested quickly and planted again, or what kind of stays in the garden all season. I mentioned succession planting, and I felt it was easier to have a visual here. So this third times throughout the season. So this shows what we might do to plant in the spring with cold hardy stuff like baby spinach, baby greens. A lot of that will be out by the time summer needs to go in. Or if baby spinach is still going, we might put a young tomato plant in the middle of it, and as it grows up, take the spinach out and blend it throughout the seasons. So like the front of the garden here, like onions and broccoli, they're things that stay in a long time past summer planting. Like we might get a window in the fall to do something with that space, but we kind of don't account for it because it's gonna stay past summer planting. And a lot of this stuff, like where the radishes on that line where there's dill and then there's radishes, that sort of represents what it would look like if you took some of the dill out and replanted with something else, kind of how flexible that is. Something also to take note of is that's a 4x8 bed. Again, it's like a standard size. So it shows you what you can fit typically in a garden, like square foot planting most efficiently. And then as compared to the next slide, which is 140 square feet, which shows you what you might fit in a lot bigger of a garden. So it gives you an idea of kind of garden size and what that can fit based on selections. One thing that we encourage is nightshade rotation. So a third of the garden space shouldn't really be taken up by nightshades, which is tomatoes, eggplant, peppers, potatoes, because they need to be rotated every 3 years. So this gives a good representation of that kind of upper left-hand corner, the left side really of that outside bed is nightshades, and it's a third of the garden space. So we'll rotate in different beds and within beds, and then everything else is non-nightshades. And you can see in the middle the squash, on the trellising, you can put, and on the top bed there's tomatoes you can put on trellising, cucumber, watermelon. So
like we said in the video, if you have built-out trellising on the side of your garden, we can use it. But for instance, like tomatoes might rotate, so you might put them on cages the next year somewhere else. So that gives you an idea of kind of size and planning. And that looks like it's about it for me. I hope all that was making sense, but we'd be happy to definitely take some questions.
Oh, yeah. I love that picture of Cat. Yeah, so we have one question. Yeah, I'm excited to get to the questions. Enough talking at you. Should we open this up to Carolyn? I see just one question. I hope if you have a question, you'll pop in. But Carolyn, would you like to ask your question? I'll go, oh, there you go.
No, well, we due to a structural collapse, we we only just we put up raised bed, and there's nothing, absolutely nothing in it. So I was wondering whether it's too late in the season to put things in now.
No.
No.
Unfortunately, no. It's not too late. You'll have plenty of time to produce big, healthy tomato, melon, cucumber, squash plants, and have quite the bounty before it gets too cold for those guys to survive. Plenty of time.
Plenty of time. Okay. Well, that's my question.
What about lettuce? Things like that. Is it too late for lettuce?
It's an inhospitable environment for lettuce right now. So there's a few things you can do. Choose heat-tolerant varieties, ones that tolerate the heat better, which of course we do for our clients. You can provide some shade or put it in a shaded spot, say behind a tall tomato. You can buy shade cloth and put the cloth over top like a little awning, like a roof on a patio almost, that provides part shade to cool the plant. You can also do baby lettuce and baby greens from seed, and if you're sprinkling that seed packet over the space that you'd like to grow, you could probably grow very young or baby, or we call actually like teenage greens, not quite, but maybe a little taller, and then you're clear cutting that crop and you'll get another flush of growth, maybe 2 flushes, and that'll be it. But that's a way that you can, the trouble with the heat with lettuce is bolting, and that's the word we use to describe a plant sensing that it's gonna die soon and the climate is inhospitable, and going straight to flowering so it can produce seeds and propagate itself by seed. And that of course makes for a bitter and lettuce that you don't want to eat. So those are a few ways to get around that with a lettuce. It is trickier. Germinating seeds in the middle of the summer is really tricky, so you just have to pay attention to them, and they'll it's not the easiest thing to do, the lettuce. Alternatives, collards and kale. Do those as plants spaced every 12 inches, and you'll have either of those, you'll have a large plant that you'll be able to harvest continuously from throughout the season. And you'll actually snap those bottom leaves off as it grows and grows, and you'll end up with something that looks like a palm tree. But those guys can provide really nutritious greens all year.
Right, thank you.
Chris, just to follow up on that, can you still put in nursery tomato eggplant and pepper plants now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you're just gonna wanna, you really pay attention to them for watering.
And I see Jason has a question about tomatoes, to follow up on the tomato theme. What type of pest management or other things to look out for if you're not an experienced tomato grower?
Okay. Jason, do you want to elaborate at all? or I will unmute you. Oh, maybe I can't. There you go.
All right, can you hear me?
Sure.
Yeah, it's just my first time growing tomatoes. I have them in pots because I ran out of space in our 4x8 bed, and you know, just I'm dealing with issues on pests for with our spinach and with our kale and stuff like that. So just trying to be kind of ahead of the game with what I should look out for our tomatoes. I saw some like little white bugs, it looked like, on them already, and was just like, okay, I need to like know exactly what I need to do.
Okay. Are they like really tiny, soft-bodied, probably aphids kind of thing?
Yeah, probably.
Okay. Okay, so those tend to show up when the plant is not experiencing vigorous growth. The best deterrent for any pest is vigorous growth. Those insects will know what are the easy targets. So if your plant's having trouble, it may be multiplied by an insect that senses that. So I will find aphids to be a problem. I've found green ones to be a problem late in the season when the plant's getting really long and it's starting to get cool. For aphids, they're relatively easy to deal with. Spraying insecticidal soap, which is almost what it sounds like, but dish soap won't do the trick. Castile soap, if you want to do it yourself, will work if you can mix it at the right concentration. Otherwise, you can buy a concentrate for insecticidal soap, and that's organic, and that will kill those aphids. You can also just nail your plant with a sharp stream of water from the hose, and that'll take care of those soft-bodied insects. They're super soft. Other than that, you're going to be like things to think of to head off. Tomatoes tend to be relatively like low insect pests. You'll have tomato hornworm. If you're lucky, I think it's really fun because they're a really wild-looking caterpillar that will hatch from an egg on the underside of the leaf. But you'll notice him if you're paying attention to your plants. You'll notice him and you'll find him, and he's super cool looking. So, then they're not going to get up in numbers the way to really cause a problem. So I think that would be more of a fun novelty. With tomatoes, the name of the game is preventing fungal disease and bacterial and viral disease. So the rotating that Mike mentioned, that with the nightshades, all the plants in that family, peppers, eggplants, tomatoes, tomatillos, and potatoes, share soil disease that increases in concentration in that soil throughout the year. And then we don't want to put the plant back in that soil again next year, because if you do that too many years in a row, those soil bacteria will grow to such a concentration that they'll become a problem for the plant. So rotating your nightshades is important. The final thing is the fungal disease, and it sort of goes the same for any like bacterial disease that affects the leaves initially. The best things you can do for your tomato, other than keep it growing vigorously, which is, you know, water appropriately and feed it and add fertilizer, is to avoid handling the leaves when the plant's wet, and to keep the plant from being wet. What happens is, it's just nice to have this visual. So there's stoma on leaves, and they're like, if you go back to like biology class, there's these tiny openings and they're used for respiration, and they really close up when the plant's dry, when it's hot. And that's a good thing, because when that gate opens, that's an opening for fungal spores and disease to be introduced to the leaf. So just think of this gate opening anytime that the leaves are wet. And when that gate's open, you don't want to be handling the plants and introducing fungal spores accidentally. And likewise, you don't want the gate to be open very much, so you want the plant to stay dry. So water the soil, not the plant. Well, don't water the leaves. Sorry, Anne, but watering at night is a great way to keep the plant wet all night and keep those gates open. So water during the day. And you hear a lot about burning the leaves from watering. Don't worry about that. That's not a real thing. So just go ahead and water anytime it's convenient for you during the day. And yeah, you'll have a lot more success with your tomatoes that way. If you want to do some extra proactive, preventive stuff, we use neem oil, which comes from the neem tree, and some other biologicals. But neem oil is a great all-around. It's an insecticide to some insects, and it's preventive for fungal disease as well. So neem oil is probably one of those tools that every gardener should have.
Chris, I know the we have a question about shade gardening, but could we back up a minute and talk a little bit more about the bed and soil preparation? I asked what kind of wood to use, you've used for the constructing the beds, and then Leah's asking about soil preparation. You just want to back up a little bit and talk about those things, and we'll get back into the next questions after that.
Sure. So your question on wood, we use two types, and the first is hemlock from our supplier, but it could really be pine or spruce or fir. It's really a framing grade interior lumber that we that the lumber yard, they'll tell you that will give you 5 to 7 years with a raised bed. We use an internal wood stabilizer, which they'll tell us that it will double the life of any wood in this context. So if you're doing the math, 10 to 14 years out of that framing grade lumber. But if you want more longevity and maybe for the look too, cedar is a very nice wood to use that's naturally rot resistant. And we of course hit it with the same treatment. So untreated, I hear 10 to 12, and then of course times 2, 20 to 25 years of life out of the bed. I mean, that said, I always like to sell the way that we construct our beds with the hardware that we use. Gives it additional life, so that sort of rotting on the ends of the boards doesn't really impact the integrity of the bed.
And you mentioned that or I guess Mike said that the soil is basically half half potting soil and half, what was the other half?
Topsoil.
Topsoil. Okay. Yeah. And are there do you also add any kind of composted manure or any other composted products at the same time?
Right. You could go so many ways with this depending on what you have available. The topsoil is mostly compost, leaf, mushroom compost actually. And it's like 30% actual soil, earth material. So it's highly organic mix that we put in. The potting soil, I would say just like straight topsoil from most suppliers will be a blend of topsoil and compost. It's not like fill soil that a contractor would use to build up the grade, right? So it's black looking stuff, but once you get started with it, it's going to compact some and it's going to repel water some. So you'll have pooling and you'll have splashing, which is bad for the leaves and the fungal disease. So we do potting mix to give it better drainage properties. And yeah, I would say when you're looking at the blend, it's almost like baking. It's like experience really counts. but you're aiming for drainage, and you're aiming for water retention, which are totally at odds with each other. So you're finding that balance. And a very shady site, you want to go heavy on drainage. So almost all potting soil maybe, with some compost. But if you're in a full sun site, like the site that Mike was on in that video, you could go all topsoil, and it wouldn't be fluffy and free draining, but it wouldn't matter because those plants are going to need so much water to deal with and thrive in that full sun.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah. And then we have Melissa's question about very shady spot. And also there's the lanternfly question embedded in that one. My yard is 90 to 95% shade with trees all around the border. The only thing we have is a blackberry plant, which is now full of baby spotted lanternflies. Can you offer any help? The two-part question.
Yeah, that's tough because I've been to those properties and had to tell people there's just nothing I'm gonna do here for you. There are things that you can do. I just haven't made myself an expert in it because it doesn't really fit our model. But there are. Yeah, I just don't know. I would go to growing herbs as the first thing. So buying starts like sage and rosemary and see how that goes. And I'd get some packets of dill and cilantro seeds and see how that goes, and put them in pots and walk them around and find the best spots so you can sort of adapt quickly and find out where you can grow stuff and what you can grow. It's always okay to try something and fail. Grab some cucumbers and see how it turns out. They tend to do something even when there's very little sun. But yeah, the blackberry is good, and the raspberries they're adapted to sort of understory. They'll produce more in the full sun, but the baby spotted lanternflies, I haven't dug into it. Sorry.
We're actually considering trying to get one of these sessions that's more targeted toward lanternfly control, because people obviously are worried about them on their trees as well as other plants. So we'll try to get that one going soon.
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic, and it's a whole new world. And we're just kind of in wait and see mode, like a lot of people are, I think. Like, what is really going to be the impact?
I think the Penn State Extension Service does have a lot of information on their website. So that's one thing to check out.
Great.
And let's see, Lori's question, are you planting just one plant in each of the grid squares, or can some have more?
Great question. So Mike, do you want to show the planting plan? Lori, can you unmute? Do you want to join in?
Yes.
Awesome.
Thank you.
So was this a screen that you were looking at when you
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Okay. So for the spinach, for example, everything down to cilantro, between baby spinach and cilantro, those are going to be sown. I think most of them are going to be 1/8 of a teaspoon per square foot of seeds, something like that. We have like a chart, so we get the right spacing, and then we do it by the square foot. So we'll take. Yeah.
So I just had an interesting. Well, I was surprised to know how this was done when I first learned it. So yeah, we measure seeds by the teaspoon or tablespoon, which is really like an estimate of quantity. And then we use one of those sort of like diner pepper shakers. How to describe better than that? Like a plastic salt shaker or pepper shaker. And that's actually a great way to get even distribution of the seeds, whatever you measured out. So if it's, you know, a quarter of a teaspoon per square foot, you have 4 square feet, obviously multiply it and sprinkle it like you would a condiment.
So if you're doing it not from seed but from plant, because we've bought things from your nursery or something, would you say that then you should plant one in a grid square or multiples?
So it depends. Kale, I would do as 1 per square. We would do that. Beets, we would do 9 per square. Broccoli 1 per square. Onions are 16 per square, and we usually do those from, we do this from starts.
So the root vegetables that don't spread out too much above. No?
You're looking for a rule of thumb. Yeah. No, because radishes and carrots and turnips will get 16 per square, so therefore beets just need more space for what we want to produce. Now, if you put more beets in a square, you would get baby beets, or maybe you wanted beet greens, and that's what you wanted to grow. But the way we do it to produce the beets in a sort of uniform manner is to assign, it's usually either 1, 2, 4, 9, or 16 per square, or some number of teaspoons.
Okay. Thank you.
So the tomato, that's getting 4 square feet. So that's tomatoes and peppers and eggplants, watermelons, cucumber, they're all getting multiple square feet because those guys want more soil space to produce. And that said, you could also do 1 tomato per square foot and just doing it differently. So it's sort of hard to know with that stuff. I mean, some people do 4 peppers right next to each other, and they like that. So, but we do get the comments like when we do tomatoes and peppers, our way of giving them lots of space and plenty of support. Just the comment of like, I never knew peppers could grow that way, with 1 plant being flush with flowers and peppers. So it really depends. This methodology is adapted from the Square Foot Gardening book, and that's an author, a man after my own heart. He was a civil engineer as well, and then came up with this grid-based planting program where he's got a chart. You can find it on Square Foot Gardening or whatever. Plant spacing, and that's a great place to start because it just takes the guesswork out, and you go, okay, if I'm growing in this way in a raised bed by the square foot, then I know exactly how many of these plants I want to put per square foot.
Yeah, we'll actually stake out a grid with stakes, like very exact. Comes out clean.
Right.
But yeah, I think to drive that point home, like, it's a spacing thing is going to depend on size. So like baby kale, you can put a bunch in a square foot and they'll be baby kale, but if you let one go, they'll be big kale, you know?
Right. Yeah, so we offer both options for kale, but that one that says kale is, to me, that would just be 1 kale plant. If it said baby kale, it would be like 1/8 of a teaspoon of kale seeds, and we grow that at baby. So it just depends what you want to do, how you want to use the space. Okay.
Thank you.
We have a question about raised beds. Do they prevent bunnies?
They might encourage bunnies on their own.
Right.
So if you want bunnies,
I would say no from experience, but we don't have a fenced in garden.
Well, so we've done some of those designs you saw. I guess I'll share my screen again really quick. So again, a lot of it's like pests, and it's, there's no predicting exactly what's going to go down with pests, but like for instance, this bed was designed high enough to keep out bunnies with a ledge, but with the understanding that if a groundhog or a deer came somehow in their fence, it's not really defense against that. So I think height to a certain extent, you never know, but height to a certain extent would deter bunnies, I would think, or a 2-foot fence on a bed.
Yeah, I would call that bed bunny safe. We also do, if you don't want to build a giant, like a really tall bed, you could do a 1-foot bed and do a 2-foot fence. And so this actually serves double for dogs as well, and people who have just rambunctious dogs like mine that will run through the garden and destroy it.
There's a 2-foot fence on a bed.
Oh, there you go. So that's something you can reach over and harvest. Bunny fence.
The bunnies can get through that wire. I had my lettuces and kale were just leveled 2 days ago by bunnies.
And what was it, the fencing that you had?
Well, I have fencing around the property, but they just walked over and ate it up.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
And they can get under. They could go through that wire fencing that's like 4 inches.
Okay.
You'd have to get really fine hardware cloth and get it into the ground.
We use a 2x3 welded wire mesh. So it's the wire, but it's coated. And what we do at the bottom is we leave an extra foot of fencing, and we'll bend it out at a 90-degree angle along the grass or whatever it is, and use landscape staples to pin that to the ground. Mm-hmm. So we have like sort of a seal or a flange with the fencing. And then to go further, to really protect the integrity of the fence, we'll extend our mulch or our gravel 6 inches beyond the edge of where 6 inches beyond the fence. That way your lawn service doesn't come and weed whack your fence and bend it up and eventually rust and break those strands that are protecting that key bottom 6 inches. So those are the things that we do to protect against those little guys. I'm sure there are bunnies that can get through, but hopefully not the ones with the big appetites.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I would just share one other idea, which is that we make little cylindrical cages out of chicken wire to individually place over smaller plants like lettuce and I guess young kale. And that seems to help deter the rabbits.
Yeah. Always, I always get to do it after.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Were your plants still alive? Or are they going to come back, or are they starting from scratch? And do you have an idea if those plants are toast now?
I think they might have another. I put the hardware cloth around it, and but they started for my beans too, so we'll see.
Oh boy. Well, best of luck.
Thank you.
Let's see. Sorry, I have so many questions, but my question was shutting the garden down at the end of the season, whether you pull the plants out as they die, whether you recommend cover crops, and then in the spring, what is the right timing for even touching the soil and or turning it over and possibly amending it.
Oh boy, these are good questions. Yeah, no, this is fun stuff. So we remove all the crops in December, and we do we'll go over with our winterization program includes removing those crops, but without disturbing the soil. So we'll chop at the base of the stem and remove the top and leave the roots in. And this is really critical, and it's the theme throughout of not disturbing the soil at all and not bringing up those weed seeds that are buried and dormant 2-3 inches down. So we have this weedless bed. After pulling those crops and removing whatever leaves and stuff, we'll do an inch and a half of compost right over top, just like lasagna, again, not mixing it in. And then we'll go over that with some mulch. We'll use salt hay as a mulch, typically. So this is going to prevent soil erosion, maintain the integrity of that layering. And it looks kind of nice. The bare soil being exposed to sun and freeze thaw and all that. So that's our winterization program. And then in the spring, we strip the straw off and we go to town. So we don't do any turning, any mixing. We don't even have to do any amending. As a home gardener, I would be getting out there St. Patrick's Day and putting my pea seeds in and starts for stuff like bok choy and kale and beets. Because we might start doing that, but we start a little later. We start mid-March with the spring plantings because we can get in all the spring crops, not just the very cold, hardy ones. So that's how you get yourself set up for success in the winter to really hit the ground running in the spring with no backbreaking work to do and no weeds.
Sounds easy.
Yeah, I think so. I wish I was out there. I didn't get to do any of that work this year, but easy. Yeah, I think much easier than tilling soil and pulling weeds all day. Yeah.
Mike and Chris, for anybody who would want to get started with you, could you just tell us a little more about that and how you approach things?
Sure. Yeah, thanks so much. You can find us on our website, and you put it in the chat here. It's just the last part of our email, backyard-eats.com. And it's here. And from there, you can book a consult, I like to say, without talking to anyone. So you can go on and pick your date and your time slot and pay for the consults. And and that's the starting point. Whether you have a garden already and you want help with coaching, or you want maintenance help, vacation help, whatever it is, or you want a new garden, obviously we do that too. So that's just where it starts for everybody. We can get to know you, get a map of your garden laid out, and get a planting plan and all that. Mike wanted me to mention that the value of the consult. So we do charge for an initial consult $55, and we want people to know that, one, it's refundable if you do work with us. So it's like turns into a credit if we do any work with us. And then if you don't, we hope you found the value in terms of having a solar evaluation of your whole property, finding out whether you can or can't or whether we recommend investing in one part of your property or avoiding, putting that money into a bad project. What else, Mike, are we really getting?
Yeah. So a lot of the biggest questions that I think are answered, whether, we maintain a relationship or not, is, can I grow anything here? If I do have limited sun, like what is it that I can grow and where? That's probably the biggest thing. Most people don't have the tools through a solar evaluation, but might have an idea. So you can check on either a spot that you think you want to garden. Is it good sun, or I can find the sun? And then from there, like size too is a lot of times a conversation, like, okay, well, how big does this need to be? What, I have 4 people and they're all going to eat from the garden. So it's nice to, I think, I kind of like sketch things out and show, like, all right, well, if we do this layout, this is how many tomatoes you can plant. This is an idea of like what you can fit. So you'll at least leave with some perspective, I think, on size and what's possible. And then in general, just, like this video we played or everything else we talked about, information on what you might want to think about.
You get a design.
Yeah, and an estimate and a design.
Yeah.
That's great.
Thanks so much, Leah. I love having this opportunity to talk gardening. I've done enough, cornering people at parties. Let's talk about gardening. Yeah, I always jump at a chance. So anytime, love to do this again. It's a lot of fun. And yeah, if you're out there and you've got some more questions, hit us up. And Mike will be your guy to go out and check it out and see how we can help you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you both so much.
Yes, thank you very much. And
Thanks so much.
Hope to see you all next week.
Yeah, oh yeah, the next session, great.
Yes, we have a residential lighting next week on Wednesday, 6 o'clock, same time. And then the week afterwards, we have our postponed program that was supposed to be last week about the rain garden on Norwood Avenue. And that will be, I believe it's tentative at the moment, but I believe it'll be the Thursday, the 25th. We'll send out an email, hopefully tomorrow, with that and a link to register.
I wanted to say one other thing is that obviously it would be awesome to do this again in person, at a garden perhaps, but also which we haven't done much of this year because of the virus thing, but workshops or like seminars, schools and things. Anybody is involved in those kind of things, we definitely love to do this kind of stuff.
Great.
So.
Yeah, we're totally game.
Excellent.
Totally game.
All right.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time from your day to help us to see our backyards in a little bit of a different light.
And
I'll be following up with you.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in and all your great questions.
Yeah.
All right. We hope to see you next week.
Yep. Take care. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye now.